August 17, 1938, Harlem. The sun baked west 126th Street until the pavement softened under every step. That afternoon, something happened that would tilt the entire balance of power in the neighborhood, but it didn't look like much at first. A uniformed white officer slapped Bumpy Johnson's sister in broad daylight. No punches thrown, no raised voices, just a single flat crack and then stillness, not a sound from the crowd, not even a whisper in the air. 3 days later, the entire precinct began to disintegrate from within, wordlessly. No shootouts, no graffiti threats, no fist-swinging street protests. Just silence engineered with precision. This wasn't about ego or vengeance. It was about leverage, the kind that doesn't make noise until it collapses everything around it. So how could one slap rattle every cop in Harlem without anyone even picking up a weapon? To know that, we have to rewind to the exact moment it all began. August 17th, 30:15 p.m. The air that day could have fried eggs on the sidewalk. Black boots made impressions in asphalt softer than clay. Mabel Johnson, 23 years old, full of quiet intention, walked home with a brown grocery bag in her arms. No crime, no suspicion, no threat, just a young black woman crossing neighborhood lines in her own neighborhood. Officer Patrick Callahan had different ideas, a man who thought his badge was a license, not a responsibility. He stepped in her path without warning, his breath stinking of old coffee. "Where do you think you're going?" he asked, not looking for a real answer. Mabel kept her eyes lowered, tried to pass. "Just going home, officer," she said softly. He sidestepped again, blocking her. "Look at me." He leaned in, his tone splitting the space. "Your kind needs to be reminded what respect means around here." Then, without hesitation, his hand snapped across her cheek. Her head jerked. The bag fell. Oranges bounced into the gutter. A jar of grape jam shattered in violet streaks across the curb like spilled blood. The noise echoed. Conversations halted. Chairs froze mid-rock. Around 30 people, barbers, domino players, women gossiping on the stoops, watched silently. No one interrupted. No one shouted. Even the man sipping coffee from his window didn't look away. Mabel stood still, the red mark on her face pulsing. She waited for his decision. Callahan sneered like he had just won a poker hand. "Pick up your trash. Disappear." 10 minutes later, word reached the one man who could change everything. Tommy Reed pushed through the Cotton Club's swinging door, sweat on his brow, purpose in his walk. In the back, beneath a single bulb that carved shadows into sharp teeth, Bumpy Johnson sat with a drink untouched and an open newspaper. Tommy stopped a few feet short, breath thick in his lungs. Something's happened. Bumpy didn't glance up. "I'm reading." Tommy gritted his teeth. "It's about Mabel." That made Bumpy's eyes rise. Suddenly, the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "What about Mabel?" Tommy's fingers twitched. "A cop hit her in front of everyone. 126th Street. Her groceries went flying. He made her gather them like trash." Bumpy folded his newspaper slowly, as if containing fire between each crease. His jaw moved like it was chewing glass. "Which precinct?" "The 28th. Cops white. Maybe 30. Been on the beat 6 years. Patrick Callahan." Bumpy produced a small black notebook and methodically printed the name inside. "Who saw it happen?" "Everyone," Tommy said. "The barber. The domino guys. Miss Sarah and her daughter. At least 30 people. Maybe more." Bumpy slid the notebook back into his coat pocket, lifted his glass, and drained it in a single sip. His voice came out like metal cooling in water. 72 hours. Tommy gave a single nod. Understood completely. Not a deadline. A timeline. Bumpy stood and adjusted his coat with care. "Find Rye. I want names. Every cop in the 28th who owes money, who's indebted to the wrong people. I want to know where Callahan drinks, who he leans on, who saves him when he screws up. I want his entire pattern on paper by midnight." Tommy hesitated. "You want us to grab him?" Bumpy's answer was a single shake of the head. "Touch no one, threaten no one, don't even glare at him. Bat and alley tactics won't work here. This job needs something harder, Tommy frowned. What does then? Bumpy turned on his heel but paused near the door. Have you seen a building collapse? It starts with a silent crack, then a thin line in the wall, then shifts in the ground. By the time it falls, people act like it's sudden, but it started dying long before. A pause. Same principle. We're not burning him down. We're just pulling away the weight that holds him up. By 6 that night, Harlem was humming with relay runners of rumor. The story of the slap rippled through every barber shop, every gambling den, every speakeasy. In each version, the details got sharper, louder. The silence that followed the slap grew longer with every retelling, and everyone understood, without plans or posters, what came next. At a card game on Lenox Avenue, a sergeant named Murphy asked an old number runner if Bumpy was going to strike back. The dealer, Clarence, didn't look up from his hand. Bumpy don't retaliate, he educates. The sergeant shifted uncomfortably. So what does that mean for Callahan? Clarence held up his cards, adjusted the Queen of Hearts. It means Callahan's gonna go through hell for what he did. But nothing you can write down, nothing you can arrest anyone for. Just a domino trail of terrible luck that ends with him begging to be gone. Murphy didn't press further. Some truths prefer the shadows. Elsewhere in a Harlem speakeasy, 2 street cops, Jackson and Torres, scanned the room as they sipped beers they didn't pay for. Behind the bar, Delilah, 90% bartender, 10% queen pin, leaned forward with the smirk edged in adrenaline. You two heard about Mabel Johnson? Jackson looked like a man who'd rather not answer but nodded. Yeah, Callahan's an idiot. Delilah wiped down a glass, her rag soaked in bleach and memory. Idiocy is dangerous when it wears a badge. Torres nursed his drink. What's Bumpy gonna do? Delilah narrowed her eyes, her tone smooth and unsmiling. Whatever it is, make sure neither of you is standing within 60 feet of Callahan when it happens, and tell your friends the same. Watching ain't innocent. Bumpy remembers silence better than names. Jackson swallowed hard. We weren't there. Delilah nodded slowly. Then stay not there, stay clear. Cop made his bed. Let him lie in it by himself. By midnight, Rye arrived at Bumpy's door with a heavy folder under one arm. The apartment was dim, quiet, tactical. Bumpy sat at his table. Harlem's map spread out before him like a war general's domain. Red pins stabbed locations. Red thread crisscrossed like veins beneath glass. Rye dropped the file. Everything you asked for. Callahan drinks at a bar in the Bronx called Sullivan's. Thursdays he's with a woman in Queens. Same woman, same building. He's in debt to 3 bookies, rough count, $800, and every single cop in the 28s hates his guts. Says he runs his mouth, stirs trouble nobody wants. Bumpy opened the folder without a word, eyes moving like a lion tracking prey no one else could see. Who covers him? Rye tapped the page. Sergeant O'Brien. They came through the academy together. O'Brien runs interference when internal affairs starts poking around. Bumpy scribbled O'Brien's name into his notebook, like he was writing the ending of a story. Does O'Brien owe anyone? Rye smirked. Kid's in private school. Tuition's about double what he makes. Been skimming off confiscated stash for 3 years to cover the bill. Bumpy closed the file, calm as winter. Perfect, that's where we begin. Tomorrow, a complaint gets filed with Internal Affairs. Anonymous. Detailed. Can't ignore it. That lights O'Brien on fire, Rye said. Bumpy nodded. And burning bridges don't save drowning men. If O'Brien gets heat, he can't shield Callahan, which means when bad luck starts paying Callahan visits, no one protects his door. Then we move to the next phase. What's that? Rye asked. Bumpy walked to the window. Lights flickered across Harlem streets like fireflies under a tired moon. We go dark. No help for the police. No witnesses. No tips. No files found. Every favor owed, revoked. No threats. Just emptiness. When will he notice? Rye asked. Bumpy's voice dropped, like stone in a well. When it's too late. By sunrise the next day, Harlem had decided NYPD was on its own. Nobody called it. Nobody let it. But the switch flipped, and suddenly neighbors were deaf and blind. At 7 a.m., 2 officers responded to a break-in at Levy's pawn shop. Normally, Levy was an unofficial clerk for investigations, faces, names, license plates. Today, he stood behind the counter and shrugged. The younger cop read from his notepad. "You called dispatch. Said a guy in a red jacket broke your window and grabbed the register." Levy's voice was ice and iron. "I said a lot of things. Maybe I was dreaming. Maybe it was shadows. I got confused. Don't know nothing now." "You're changing your statement?" the officer asked. Levy locked eyes with him, cold, correcting it. "Now, unless you're leaving money behind, get the hell out of my store." That was just the beginning. Within hours, calls came in, stabbing on 133rd, 8 witnesses. No one saw a thing. A man shot outside a speakeasy claimed he accidentally shot himself cleaning his gun. A woman found scraped and bruised behind a grocery claimed she fell down the stairs. "Nobody touched me," she repeated, until the officers left empty, embarrassed. In the precinct break room, Murphy drank bitter coffee and stared at his cup like it had betrayed him. Callahan walked in, smirking. "Something got you panties twisted, Sarge?" Murphy didn't glance up. "You slapped someone interesting yesterday?" "That Johnson broad needed a lesson. I taught her. End of story." Murphy set down his mug slow. "No, idiot, that was Chapter 1. Chapter 2 started 20 minutes later, and Chapter 3 will have you begging for a pen to sign your transfer notice." Callahan's grin faltered. "What the hell does that mean?" Murphy stood. "It means Harlem just voted you out. No witnesses, no cooperation, no files, every lead evaporating like mist. You screwed the wrong person, and now we all pay." Callahan turned red, fists balling. "They need us more than we need them." Murphy just shook his head, walked away. "You keep saying that while you pack for Staten Island." Back at the Cotton Club, Bumpy scanned the same paper twice, reading between words. Tawny leaned against the door. Rye cleaned his nails with a penknife, casual but listening. Jerome stormed in, sweat soaking through his collar. "3 cops just came by my shop, asked about a break-in last week. I told them I didn't see nothing. They said I better remember something before they come back." Without looking up, Bumpy said, "Let them return. Give them the same answer." White was bad. Thoughts were fuzzy. Memory unclear. "Doesn't matter what you say. Just don't help." "How long we keeping this up?" Bumpy finally looked at him, coffee in hand. 72 hours. If Callahan's still here by then, we'd bury him with shame so heavy it'll take them decades to dig his career out. Jerome, eyes wide. "You going to kill him?" Bumpy's coffee had gone lukewarm. He drank it anyway. "I won't touch him, but the machine he hides behind, will starve it till it eats him to survive." That same afternoon, a shipment of heroin meant for Frank Costello went up in smoke at the George Washington Bridge. 60 pounds in hollowed-out spare tires. The driver arrested, the product seized. Within hours, Costello was on the phone with Bumpy. His voice was tight enough to slice glass. "My supply chain's dying. Why?" Bumpy lit a cigarette, exhaled like a man who'd already done the math. "Your truck wasn't waved through today." The 2 cops who usually do that called out. "That's not bad luck. That's pressure." Bumpy didn't blink. "Patrick Callahan slapped my sister. The message is simple. You hurt a woman in Harlem. Harlem shuts down. Bad for you, bad for the department, bad for anyone making money." "How long?" Costello asked flatly. 72 hours from the moment her groceries hit the concrete. Either he's gone, or this blockade sticks. Let your blue-shirted friends know slapping the wrong woman gets expensive. Costello went quiet, silent, like a man measuring risk versus profit. "Then, the Italians don't appreciate disruptions." "Then speak to your puppets," Bumpy replied, calm steel. "Callahan's behavior can't stand, otherwise others will follow. And Harlem will stop being profitable for all of us." Costello hung up with no goodbye. Bumpy inhaled smoke, met Tommy's eyes. "He's making calls. By tomorrow, pressure hits the precinct from the other side. We pull back." Costello loses money. Italians push the department. Captain loses patience, and Callahan loses everything. By nightfall, Harlem dimmed itself. Numbers runners halted their books early. Card games turned their decks in. Juke joints that used to sing until dawn now sat in silence by midnight. Even cab drivers hung up their keys, streets growing quieter as yellow headlights blinked out. Like an orchestra finishing its final performance, Harlem paused, daring the department to play without them. Thursday morning, the precinct captain, Reynolds, was drowning in reports that read more like riddles. Clearance rates bottomed out. Witnesses evaporated. Tip lines echoed with silence. Even trusted snitches forgot their own names. At his desk, Reynolds' phone rang like a death bell. Downtown, the Italians, the mayor's office liaison, all demanding answers. In the break room, Callahan slurped his third awful coffee. "This'll all blow over," he muttered. At the Cotton Club, Bumpy circled the same story in the paper. Calm, patient, counting down the minutes like a conductor waiting for thunder. One understood Harlem, the other thought a badge made him immortal. Where sirens once led order, now came confusion. Cars delayed, dispatch tangled in false reports and address mistakes. Response times doubled, then tripled. Officers sent to the wrong areas, while real crimes happened blocks away. In the precinct, the desk sergeant screamed at the dispatcher, "I said 126th, not 122nd. On the other end, Clara, the black woman who'd taken calls for 12 years, responded icily, "I wrote what you said. If you messed up, that's not on me," then hung up. 3 minutes later, another wrong call. Another slow report. Another delay that felt like sabotage but looked like mistakes. The sergeant hurled his clipboard so hard into the wall it left a dent that nobody fixed until the building came down decades later. Court records vanished. A robbery case meant to be heard Friday morning now had entire witness statements missing from the file. The clerk insisted the documents were filed properly. The judge threatened her. She shrugged. "Can't produce what doesn't exist. Maybe it got misfiled, maybe tossed out, maybe it never came in." The case collapsed. No evidence, no testimony, no trial. The defendant walked free. In the hallway, the prosecutor cornered the clerk. "You did this deliberately." She met his fury with stillness. "Then prove it. Bring me proof. Otherwise, get out of my face." The evidence room logs turned chaotic. Guns vanished. Drugs weighed less than recorded. Dates no longer lined up. Chain of custody looked like Swiss cheese. Defense attorneys swarmed the weaknesses like sharks to blood. Motions to suppress poured in. Many succeeded. Police work didn't grind to a halt, it crumpled. The errors weren't loud. They were surgical, precise, designed to embarrass, not explode. And all of it, every botched paper, missing file, and forgotten witness, traced back to a single crack across a young woman's face. Captain Reynolds read a stack of reports Thursday that raised his blood pressure past doctor's warnings. He summoned Murphy into his office and nearly pulled the door off its hinges. "What the hell is going on? We've had more screw-ups in 48 hours than we had in 6 months. Murphy stood at parade rest, face unreadable. "Bad luck, Captain. Rough week." Reynolds leaned over his desk, voice dropping to gravel. "Every case falling apart, every call missing, every witness suddenly blind. This isn't bad luck. This is a goddamn revolt." Murphy kept his tone flat. "Against whom, sir?" Reynolds stared. "You know who. Bumpy Johnson, because some idiot put hands on his sister." Murphy's eyes didn't blink. Unfortunate situation. Reynolds turned his back, looking out at Harlem's lights flickering like angry stars. "This is a mutiny. Downtown's breathing down my neck. The Italians are pulling resources, and the mayor wants my badge if I don't fix it. This is damn near the end of the line." He turned back, breathing hard. "Where's Callahan?" Murphy didn't blink. "East Harlem Patrol." Reynolds grabbed the phone. "Call him in, now. Then find someone who can reach Bumpy. This ends tonight, or Callahan's working Staten Island traffic tomorrow." Across town, in the back of the Cotton Club, Bumpy hadn't touched his whiskey in 20 minutes. Rye walked in, nodded. "Captain's hunting for Callahan. He wants to meet with you. Maybe negotiate. Bumpy twirled his glass gently. No deal, he said. Callahan leaves Harlem or everything stays broken. Rye raised an eyebrow. Department might escalate. National Guard even. Bumpy smiled, not wide, but deep, with the confidence of a gambler holding a royal flush. Let them. National Guard doesn't speak Harlem. They need the people to operate here. Locals, translators, quiet agreements. Without cooperation, they're just uniforms playing soldier in the dark. Rye took a chair, absorbed that truth. You're all in on this. Bumpy finally drank the whiskey. Cold, sharp, satisfying. It's not a gamble. It's a lesson, one the NYPD won't forget anytime soon. We're teaching respect, teaching that Harlem ain't playgrounds and prey. While the precinct fumbled, Harlem whispered. Silent resistance became coordination. The city wasn't attacked. No windows trashed. No buildings bombed. Instead, cooperation vanished like air draining from a room. The system stalled not because it broke, but because all the gears started turning in the wrong direction, just enough to jam the machine. You don't drop a hammer on a wall. You pull brick after brick and then wonder when the roof collapsed. That evening, Thursday, 6 hours before the 72-hour mark, Officer Callahan coasted through a stop sign on 145th Street, not even slowing. Bad day? Probably. Worst day ahead? Absolutely. A new rookie named Martinez pulled him over, nervous, careful, not part of the inner club. Callahan sneered the whole way through. Really? Me? A stop sign? Martinez followed protocol, called in the badge number. Normally, it would clear in a minute. This time, 11-minute delay. When the call finally came back, Martinez's face changed, like he'd seen a ghost that whispered his own name. Sir, I need you to come with me. The system flagged something. Badge discrepancy. What kind of discrepancy? I don't know. They said bring you in. Callahan got in the back, his thoughts boiling. He'd file 30 complaints by morning. Seat leather squeaked under his rage. 20 minutes later, he sat in an interrogation room that smelled like bleach and mistakes. Ancient sweat hovered in the diffuser. Fluorescent lights buzzed like static-filled radios. One bulb flickered every 7 seconds, long enough to irritate, too short to tune out. The wall clock ticked like it belonged in a crime novel. 7:30 p.m. He stared at the wall. No one came. Silence stretched. 7:45, 8:03, 8:15. The drip of time became unbearable. The light flickered again. The drip of time became unbearable. The light flickered again. The smell changed. Something under the bleach now. Fear? Maybe. Not that he'd admit it. He stood, rattled the door, locked, slammed a fist into the frame. Somebody open this. Door. A voice replied, muffled through the steel and concrete. Sit tight, officer. Someone will be with you shortly. He sat again. 8:30, 8:45. His watch and the wall clock disagreed. Were they both lying? Was time breaking down? Was his mind bending under the weight? At 19, the sergeant opened the door holding a clipboard. Callahan leapt to attention. Finally. What the hell is? The sergeant cut him off, flipping pages. Your personnel file shows inconsistent signatures. Recent reports don't match your academy forms. We need to verify your identity. Callahan lost what little cool he had left. I'm a cop. I work here. You know who I am. Not my job to assume, the sergeant replied, stone-faced. Until we verify you're just a name with conflicting paperwork. He left. Lock clicked back. Just like that, Callahan sat again. 19:15, 9:30. Still no one. Light still flickering. His right eye twitched like it was trying to escape his head. He heard voices in the hallway, chuckles that stopped when they neared his door, laughs that didn't include him. At 10, a personnel officer walked in with a file the size of a phone book. She was calm, efficient, brutal. State your graduation date from the academy, she asked. June 15th, 1932, he said. Check the file. She checked. Doesn't match what we have. Then your file's wrong. She didn't blink. Our file is never wrong. Either you're mistaken or you're lying. Which is it? He growled beneath his breath. I'm not lying. I'll check. Could take a while. Department's running slow lately. She gathered her files and left. The door locked again with that same heavy coffin sound. 10:30. 11:30. A guard shift changed outside. He heard it. He heard everything. Laughter, shuffling, whispers, doors opening, but not his. Minutes ticked like hours. It wasn't the loneliness. It was being forgotten, powerless. At midnight, the door opened again. This time it was a different sergeant, older, silver streaks in his hair, eyes dulled by years of watching men break apart in rooms just like this. He held a single sheet of paper, thin and unimpressive, like it shouldn't matter. Your signature clears, he said. You're free to go. Callahan shot to his feet, chair clattering behind him. 4.5 hours? For a stop sign and a signature? This is bullshit. The sergeant shrugged, unmoved. Systems backed up. Lot of paperwork lately. You get it. The door opened wide enough for him to step through it, and the hallway beyond felt like walking uphill against a tide. Cops watched him pass. Silent, neutral, unfriendly. Not hostile, just empty, like they'd already written him off. He pushed his way out of the precinct and onto the steps, took in the Harlem air like it was freedom, but it didn't taste like relief. It tasted like fear, cold, earthy, suffocating. No one had laid a hand on him. No threats were made. No gun was pulled. But the message was louder than sirens. He was alone. The system he counted on had closed its eyes and stepped away. Somewhere, Bumpy Johnson was checking his watch, smiling quietly. The final lesson had nearly been delivered. The deepest damage isn't the kind that cracks you bones. It's the kind that seeps in slow, settles in your thoughts, makes you wonder who sees you as disposable. That incident, 4.5 hours locked away without cause, taught Callahan that reality better than any punch ever could. And now he knew he had 6 hours left in Harlem. If he had brains, he'd spend them crafting a transfer request to anywhere he could disappear. By August 20th, the 72-hour mark slammed down like a judge's gavel, unmistakable and irreversible. Callahan spent that night in his apartment, revolver on the nightstand, eyes fixed on the ceiling. He listened to footsteps in the hallway, every passing car, every door click in the building, wondering if this was the moment Harlem came calling, wondering if silence would be followed by anything louder. No sleep, just darkness and imagination and the useless comfort of a service weapon 6 feet away. At 6 a.m., the call came. Captain Reynolds wanted him in the office. Callahan made the walk through the precinct like a ghost dragged through his own funeral. Cops turned away. Conversations stopped. Not one person met his eyes. Not one greeting. Just empty space between boots and stares and finality. Reynolds sat behind his desk with a folder opened wide like a final decision already signed. Sit, he said, tight-jawed. Callahan obeyed. Reynolds didn't even look at him as he closed the file and said, You're being transferred. Immediate effect. Staten Island. Traffic. Callahan reeled. Traffic? Are you serious? That's not punishment. It's exile. I didn't do anything wrong. Reynolds stood up, walked around the desk until he was inches away. You hit a woman in front of 30 witnesses. That woman's brother owns this neighborhood. For the last 3 days, our precinct has been bleeding out because nobody will talk, nobody will help. And every road leads to you. Callahan stood in defiance. You're letting a gangster run policy? What the hell is this? Reynolds didn't flinch. I'm keeping this from turning into something worse. Don't fool yourself. Badges don't matter here. Authority doesn't matter here. Harlem decided you're poison, and you don't survive when 50,000 pairs of eyes look at you and say no. Then he leaned in lower. Now get out, pack up, and pray Bumpy Johnson's satisfied with you leaving instead of dead in an alley. At the Cotton Club, Bumpy folded the newspaper quietly. Tommy walked in at 7:15, grinning like a man carrying the punchline to a long joke. He's gone, he said. Transfer, Staten Island, traffic duty, Monday morning. Bumpy nodded once. Good. Tell everyone. Cooperation resumes. Harlem opens its mouth again. Tommy hesitated. What if Callahan stays? What if he fights it? Bumpy took a sip of cold coffee, unfazed. Then we escalate. But he won't. He spent 4 hours in a steel box figuring out what fear tastes like. Men like that don't challenge you, they run. By noon, Harlem ran as if nothing had ever happened. Barbers whispered again. Card games buzzed. Dispatchers picked up phones without hesitation. Witnesses remembered full names and plate numbers. Even the liquor flowed like normal. It wasn't forced. It was agreed upon. Mutual ceasefire. The blockade vanished because the condition was met. The problem was removed. In the 28th Precinct, stats bounced back. Downtown backed off. The Italians reopened supply. Costello didn't call again. And Callahan, he packed a cardboard box with loose tapes, photos, and a nameplate no one would miss. Walked out without a handshake or glance. No one said goodbye. No one cared. Officially, it was called a routine personnel transfer due to department needs. But Harlem kept the real story alive, burning like a slow fire behind closed doors. They didn't forget Mabel Johnson. They didn't forget the slap, or the quiet that followed, or the transfer that shook the whole city. They passed it along in barbershop chairs and kitchen counters. Fathers whispered it to sons with reverence. The timeline, slap, silence, 72 hours, transfer never changed. Even decades later, there was no confusion. The score stayed settled with interest. New cops sent to Harlem after that came with warnings. You see a black woman walk past, one sergeant told a rookie in 1942. You nod. Say good morning. That's it. You keep your words calm and your mouth shut, because the last guy who thought he was king, he ended up counting cars on a ferry dock. The data buried the truth beneath cold numbers, assault reports down 30% after that August. Excessive force complaints dropped even more. Files gathering dust in captains' drawers were no longer needed, because the behavior had stopped, not out of discipline, out of caution. The story had spread. Nobody wanted to be the next example. Officers became careful not from compassion, but from fear. The community never made direct threats. They just remembered. Remembered that Harlem wasn't helpless, that it could unplug the system without lighting a single match. Bumpy never explained it. If someone asked, he'd smile, change the subject, and let the silence speak for him. The less he said, the stronger the story grew. From moment to warning, warning to folklore, legend to template. By 1952, a young punk asked an old hustler at a backroom card game, "How does Bumpy control Harlem without soldiers?" The old man didn't blink, just dealt the next hand, smacked the deck and said, "He doesn't need muscle. He's got something better. 50,000 people who remember what happens when you cross him." "You can't fight that," the man added. "You can't arrest that. You just respect it or you get crushed under it." When Bumpy Johnson died of a heart attack in 1968, right there in Wells Restaurant, Harlem mourned a general of silence. The streets filled like a parade. NYPD manned the perimeters, quiet, orderly, respectful. The papers called him a criminal. But the Times also said he kept the peace in Harlem when other places fractured. They couldn't explain why. But Harlem knew. Patrick Callahan retired from the NYPD in 1960 after 28 years in service. Most of those years were spent in Staten Island, standing in intersections, waving traffic along, writing parking citations people tossed without reading. His pension was modest. His reputation was non-existent. No one mentioned his name outside of whispered stories meant to warn fresh recruits. He passed away in 1973, buried by the state in a quiet New Jersey nursing home. 11 people came. No flowers. No uniformed honor guard. No words worth remembering. But the lesson? That buried deeper than Callahan ever could be. It was passed down like family heirlooms. Harlem didn't forget. Not the version written by bureaucrats, the one in dusty files that claimed it was a routine reassignment. Harlem kept the real version alive, the human version, the one that mattered. They remembered the day, A white cop slapped Mabel Johnson. The days Harlem fell completely silent, the day he vanished from the beat forever, the math was gospel. Slap, silence, 72 hours. Transfer. There was no need to teach it formally. It lived in the concrete, in the chipped corners of stoop steps, in the knowing glances passed between barbers and dads and bartenders. When a new officer arrived, they felt it. When a veteran kept his tone low, he owed it to that story. The code wasn't written, but God help you if you broke it. Statistics didn't shout, but they whispered the truth. Public assaults by officers dropped a third the year after. Use of force complaints vanished like fog at sunrise. Problems that once flooded the captain's desk dried up, not because the people forgave the system, but because the system learned to tread softly. Harlem didn't need permission, it needed respect, and now it had both, earned the hard way. By 1945, it was almost unheard of for a white cop to lay hands on a black woman in central Harlem with witnesses or without, unless the law left absolutely no room for ambiguity. That wasn't written policy. It was instinct. That rule embedded itself in precinct culture so deep, even rookies picked it up without knowing where it came from. Respect the neighborhood, or become invisible to it. Bumpy Johnson never once boasted about the summer of '38. When someone mentioned it, he just sipped his coffee, flicked his cigarette ash, and changed the subject. Because power didn't brag. Power didn't need applause. Silence did more with fewer words, and silence never leaves fingerprints at the scene. And yet, the story only grew stronger. By the time it crossed into myth, it had sharp edges and smooth delivery. It taught Harlem what smart defense looked like. It didn't need guns or bullets. It didn't punch back. It pulled itself out from the equation until the equation failed. Real control isn't in shouting. It's in the murmur that turns into thunder when 50,000 people hum the same resistance without raising their voices. That's what made Bumpy Johnson more dangerous than the flashier gangsters who left trails of bodies and paranoia. His power taught restraint. His silence taught consequences. 1965. A man took his son down 126th Street, the boy no older than 10. He pointed to a crack in the sidewalk, still visible but worn away. "Your aunt," he said, "got slapped right there, by a cop." The boy lipped up. "What'd Uncle Bumpy do?" The man's eyes narrowed, both pride and warning glowing in his voice. He waited 3 days, didn't lift a finger. Then he smiled and said, and the cop disappeared. That boy grew up knowing true power doesn't need to hit first. Real power makes sure nobody wants to hit you at all. The lesson Harlem kept wasn't in volume, it was in depth. The silence that fell like night across the neighborhood for 72 hours became the template for how it would protect itself moving forward. The silence did the violence, and it never missed. Buildings tremble more from what they don't hear than what makes noise. Real power is the whisper that shakes the streets. Real power isn't declared with bullets. It moves like fog, like patience, like strategy. And when an entire neighborhood whispers the same threat without speaking a word, it's louder than any gunshot ever fired. That summer, Harlem learned how to make a system collapse from the inside out. No bombs, no bodies, just a slow exhale of cooperation, just the absence of help. Everything seized up, everything burned without fire. All because one man knew how to count to 72. And because no one forgot what happened after. Some stories don't need to be screamed. Some endings don't come with fireworks. Real change whispers. And when that whisper flows to a city like Harlem, everything listens. The slap was never just a slap. It became a symbol. The silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. And Bumpy Johnson didn't start a war. He ended one, without lifting a finger. When a community moves together, not in outrage, but in discipline, even the strongest systems lose their grip. And that's a lesson more powerful than any weapon. You can't arrest silence. You can't fight unity. And once a memory becomes legend, you can't erase it. Harlem never forgot. Let's talk. Do you think silence can be more powerful than protest? Or is action always louder than words? Drop your thoughts below. We're reading every single one. If this story lit a fire inside you, if it made you feel the weight of history, the quiet power of unity, then make sure you subscribe. Because these stories matter. Stories that don't glorify chaos but teach control, strategy, and respect. Stories that prove you don't always need to fight louder. Sometimes you just need to move smarter. Our next story drops soon. Stay with us.